If you work in a business, there's a good chance you're subject to some sort of workplace policy. Ideally, these policies are inclusive. We want the rules of work to work for everyone. Can AI help us spot what's working and what's not? My name's Josh Prasad. I'm an assistant professor of psychology at Colorado State University and co-founder of Prasad & Associates. In both roles, I'm interested in how AI might change how we all do work. So whether you're a consultant in this space or an employee hoping to scrutinize their employer's policy, how could you make use of AI? Let's take a look. First, I need an HR policy document. I'm going to use the one from my day job at Colorado State University. Next, I'm going to go to ChatGPT, and full disclosure, I'm using the OpenAI Plus account. Unfortunately, they don't allow chatting with documents with a free account, at least not yet, but that should change soon. I'll upload my document by dragging it into the chat area. And now I can ask questions of it like I regularly would with ChatGPT, but it has information from this specific file. So we can start with a basic request. Can you give me a one-paragraph summary of what's in this document? So we're getting a response. And with the response, we can see the CSU HR manual provides comprehensive guidelines for the human resources policies and procedures at Colorado State University, et cetera, et cetera. So yep, we verified that ChatGPT can read. But what about our original question? Is my HR policy inclusive? For that, I'm going to turn to a set of standards for assessing the diversity policies and practices produced by the FDIC and other financial regulators to see what I should be looking for. And if this seems a little left field, I'll explain why I chose this in a bit. It's a fairly comprehensive document. We won't take time to fully unpack it, but let's scroll down here to workforce profile and employment practices. Here we can see a number of recommendations for actions that ought to be clearly laid out in some sort of policy. Let's try this one out. We'll copy it and then go back to ChatGPT. So I've taken the text from that standards document and modified it slightly to make for a good prompt. So instead of what it originally said, I put organizations ought to ensure equal employment opportunities for all employees and applicants for employment and does not engage in unlawful employment discrimination based on gender, race, or ethnicity. Does the HR policy document I uploaded speak to this at all? Please quote areas that it does. Also, please suggest areas where this policy document may fall short of this standard. So let's see what ChatGPT has to say. All right. Looks like it is pulling some direct quotes from the document. All right, so it seems to have completed its review. Let's first take a look at some of these quotes. I'm going to first copy this and then go back to my HR document. Let's go back to ChatGPT. We can see that in addition to pulling relevant quotes, it's also using its knowledge of the document to make several recommendations for how this policy can be improved. For example, the policy could benefit from more explicit measures and actions to promote diversity and inclusion. Specific initiatives, training programs, and accountability measures could be detailed to show active efforts in achieving these goals. So we've seen that ChatGPT can take a look at a fairly comprehensive HR policy document, and when prompted, provide suggestions to improve how inclusive it is. But before we go further, in fairness to my employer, they're a sprawling entity, and not all relevant policy is contained in this one document. But with that said, hopefully you can see the beginnings of how AI can be leveraged for an important task like policy evaluation. We could extend this in several ways. For instance, we only tested one policy standard. We could craft additional prompts around more of the standards to broadly evaluate this document. We could even try to ask for ChatGPT to craft its own summary of standards using the FDIC document, and then scrutinize my HR policy document using those summarized standards. Hopefully that may be appealing to employee and employer alike. Shifting to a consulting perspective, perhaps we could build a custom GPT that automatically screens policy documents from clients for several standards to initially diagnose issues, or deploy an app using a service like Amazon Q that allows potential clients to paste in parts of their employment policies and get recommendations inspired by proprietary expertise. Let me know if you'd be interested in videos on how to do that. But before we wrap up, a few caveats. First, if you look at the OpenAI policy, relevant given the topic of this video, it clearly states that AI is not a replacement for human expertise. Think of these AI tools like an entry-level employee, certainly appropriate for many initial decisions, but leave the high-stakes decisions to the experts. Second, be careful of the data that you use with these tools. I chose CSU's HR policy and the standards from the FDIC in part because they were publicly accessible. Many of these AI tools use your data, so avoid sending private or proprietary information unless you know for sure the AI service won't be using it for other tasks like training their models. And finally, depending on when you're watching this video, a lot of the tools may have changed and the implementation along with it. With all that said, for those inundated with the buzz of AI but unsure of its practical value, I hope you found this example helpful. If I could ask a favor, please consider sharing and commenting. I'd love to make more videos like this inspired by your feedback. I'll see you in the next one.